At 8:17 on a quiet Tuesday morning, Richard Bennett answered his phone. And within 23 minutes, he believed his daughter was dying. She was crying. She knew his name. She knew his wife's name. She even remembered the family cabin in northern Michigan. So Richard did what any father would do. He emptied part of his retirement savings to save her life. There was only one problem. His daughter had never called. If you've ever answered a phone because you recognized a loved one's voice, if you've ever believed, "I'd know if something sounded wrong," this story may change the way you answer your next call. Because today's scams aren't just stealing money, they're borrowing trust. Richard was 69, a retired electrician. His wife, Linda, had spent 38 years as an elementary school librarian. Together, they'd done almost everything right. No credit card debt, a paid-off home, a modest retirement portfolio, enough Social Security and pension income to sleep well at night. They weren't wealthy, they were careful. And careful people often believe they're too cautious to be fooled. That's exactly what made Richard the perfect target. What happened over the next 48 hours would involve 4 strangers, one artificial voice, and a decision Richard would replay in his mind for months. The phone rang again. Unknown number. Richard almost ignored it. Then he heard,
"Dad."
Just one word, but it sounded exactly like Emily, his 37-year-old daughter. Then came sobbing.
"Dad, don't hang up."
There were sirens, people shouting, metal clanging. It sounded chaotic. Before Richard could ask a question, a man took the phone.
"Sir, your daughter has been involved in a serious accident."
Everything after that became a blur. The man never demanded money, not immediately. Instead, he gave Richard something far more dangerous: hope.
"My name is Daniel Brooks. I work with Emergency Case Coordination."
Not police, not hospital staff. The title sounded official enough, yet vague enough to avoid questions. He explained there had been a rental vehicle, an injured child, possible criminal charges. Emily was frightened. She needed legal assistance immediately. Richard asked to speak to her again. He heard crying.
"Dad, please."
The voice cracked exactly the way Emily's always had when she was overwhelmed. Richard never imagined a computer could imitate fear. Linda walked into the kitchen. She saw Richard shaking.
"What happened?"
He couldn't finish the sentence. Linda reached for her phone.
"I'm calling Emily."
The man interrupted.
"Please don't. If multiple calls interfere with emergency processing, delays could affect your daughter's situation."
It sounded ridiculous, but fear makes ridiculous things sound reasonable. Linda hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. Richard drove to his bank. He withdrew a large sum that represented years of disciplined saving. The teller paused.
"Everything okay today?"
Richard smiled weakly. Family emergency. Those 2 words ended the conversation. No alarm, no warning, only silence. Outside, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Richard had been told someone would meet him. He never questioned why. He was thinking about Emily, not himself. Emily, meanwhile, was sitting in a meeting 3 states away. Her co-worker, Maria Torres, noticed Emily's phone lighting up repeatedly with missed calls from neighbors and relatives.
Emily stepped into the hallway. She called home. No answer. Then she called her mother. Linda finally answered. She was crying. Emily? The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it felt much longer. Emily was safe. Richard was not.
By evening, Detective Marcus Harris sat across from Richard and Linda. He had seen similar cases before, not identical, but frighteningly close. He explained how criminals sometimes gather audio from public videos, voicemail greetings, or social media clips, then use AI to imitate a person's voice. The technology wasn't magic. It wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be. It only had to sound convincing during moments of panic. Richard lowered his head.
I knew that voice.
The detective answered quietly. No, you knew your daughter, and that's what they counted on. The financial loss hurt, but the emotional damage hurt more. Richard stopped answering unknown numbers. Linda replayed every decision. Emily blamed herself for sharing family videos online. No one slept well, not because of the money, because trust had been shaken. Even ordinary phone calls felt different. Months later, Richard spoke at his local retirement community. He didn't tell people they were foolish. He told them they were human. He encouraged families to create a private verification phrase known only to close relatives. He reminded neighbors to pause before acting under pressure. Fear demands speed. Wisdom asks for one more minute. That single minute can change everything. Today, Richard still answers the phone, but differently. He listens. He pauses. He verifies. Because retirement isn't only about protecting investments, it's about protecting confidence. Scammers don't just chase bank accounts. They chase love, responsibility, family. The very qualities that make people good parents and grandparents. One phone call almost rewrote Richard's retirement. Not because he was careless, because he cared. And perhaps that's the hardest lesson of all. If this story made you stop and think about someone you love, share it with them. One conversation today may prevent one devastating phone call tomorrow.